Hey, hello. This is the third video covering Chapter 4 for Containers and Cloud Native Roadshow Dev Track Module 3. And we're going to start having a little fun here with examining our application and the way it operates within the service mesh. We're going to generate a load, given a command line here to put in a for loop with a sleep of 2 that will call the API with a curl command. Just clean this up for us. Yeah, we're getting 200 back, and this will just loop for a long time, long enough. Now we're going to open up the Kiali console, and Kiali is a very cool application that does a couple of things pretty well. One is it's going to give us some visualization. Oh, and when we log in here, we're going to delegate the authentication to OpenShift. I can have visibility of the Istio system or the book info system. I don't need to use the service mesh to examine the service mesh here. I'm interested in the application here. But first thing I can do if I want is take a look using the graph, select my book info namespace, and there's traffic going on. I can click on traffic animation, and now I see here's how traffic comes in from the gateway, uh, uses a virtual service, which is designated by the triangle. Here's our legend, a service, um, just a service, it says. And the square represents the app, rounded corner square. And hey, we can see that what happened. You got version 1, version 2, right here, version 1, 2, 3 of the reviews, and why 2 of them had stars and the other didn't. They're all using the same, both are using the same rating system, so same number of stars, just different colors here. So that's how that works. The We can take a look at other things. We're looking at the full namespace here, but we can take a look at the application. Look at product page. We can see in an overall health, we're getting 100% coverage in terms of response to API calls. See that all of our summary information here is correct. We can see the graphics of the inbound metrics and the request duration. Once it started caching, you can see the request duration went way down. Outbound metrics, and we can also see workloads. Workloads are basically the summary of the workings of the pods. And if we look at the product page's workloads, we'll actually see the same graphs, same data here, because we just have this one workload, or this series of workloads within that graph or the namespace. I can see services, and services, of course, the little internal load balancer that effectively um, spreads round robin style the traffic across the redundant pods, although we only have one pod for each one. You see a little scatter graph of tracing. But if we really wanted to see detailed information, we can go to our Jaeger, and Jaeger does tracing to give us real drill down on what we might want to see in terms of latencies. So we'll actually do a little consult in Jaeger for product page user book info. In fact, it's in the drop down. Hit find traces, and there we go. So these are traces in terms of execution and latency. And see, there's a kind of a time domain scatter plot, if you will, of the latency involved in the whole request. If we click on one of these, it'll highlight that request. Now we see this is one of the longer requests. It has the overall response is 28.5 milliseconds. The product page itself, that call took up the bulk of the duration, of course, and it did first the call from book info, and then went down and traced within the product page. Here's the response of the product page. Here's what went on inside the product page. Same with the reviews here, and then here we have the this execution here is a little tiny execution actually by Istio itself. And what this is the mixer. It operates on port 9091, and it took like a quarter of a millisecond to determine that to authenticate the traffic in by policy, and then it took a little time to send the metrics back to Prometheus here in Kiali. So this is what happens in terms of the ratings and or the reviews, and in this case the reviews called the ratings, and had a little bit of time doing the Istio work as well. So when you take the longest tracks, you might find that, hey, yeah, they have that Istio. That Istio response becomes and becomes cached. Some of it isn't fully each time sampled. So on some of these traces, like here's another long one. If I click on this one, here I don't see the mixer events. All right, so here's the ratings, calling the ratings, what's going on within the ratings. So due to effective caching and quick execution, that reduces the overhead in the application of having Istio. And then the shortest ones will likely be, so with no ratings. So here's the reviews, but there's no ratings down here underneath it. If I look at the middle one, yeah, okay, here's a review with ratings underneath. And if we wanted to compare two of these, we can do that. We can take a look at an 8 span versus a 6 span. Compare those tracks. And something that exists in the first one that's not in the second one will be green. Something that's in the second one but not in the first one, that path will be red. This one's the same between them. But it's different when you're calling down into the ratings than when you're just using the review. So this makes that a difference that inherits its red class of depiction all the way up. So that's Jaeger. We can query within Prometheus as well. Oops, I hit the link that takes us to the product page. I'll go to the console here. Okay, and what I want to query for here is the request duration seconds, and I'm counting those. So I'm doing a cumulative account, and I'll get a histogram for that. I'll execute that query here. And here's the console output. And you can see the details here if you want to look at it. And here's the graph. So we're still getting a cumulative here. It goes into details and shows you exactly what it is. So this is a good representation to be able to use in order to see what's going on for various different parameters. Now it has other suggestions here, like let's just see all the ones that are destined for product page. I can replace that or add another element here. And take a look at the graph. Okay, so here's just the product page. And they suggest playing around with other things here you can put in here. I won't get into doing a lot of it other than to say the really cool thing about these queries is if you just start typing, like I for Istio, um, anything with Istio or an I in it shows up here. So there are just a myriad of different things that are being sampled that you can query. So if you're interested in any of that, the sky is the limit in what you can do in the Prometheus. Uh, Prometheus is relatively raw. I mean, it's nice to use and easy, but Grafana has a project where they really tried to make a general purpose dashboard type of capability out of it, and we will use the Grafana console to do some visualizations here. Really nice JavaScript effects here. Okay, so we can create a dashboard here. I'm going to use a preloaded dashboard, manage and Istio and Istio mesh dashboard. Now I can see what's going on here in the overall Istio mesh, and everything has got a 100% success rate. Looks like all these services are returning data. There's a global, and then basically some gateway and mesh policy type of viewpoints here. So it's a nice dashboard in terms of that. Uh, but I can also drill down in terms of other sorts of elements of the dashboard. And I can take a look at the service metrics. So I can take a look at, and this is really hard to read in this documentation. Let's see, zoom in. But I could take a look at the product page. So within the service mesh, I can drop down and say that we should be looking at product page user toolbook info. Click on that. There we go. So we can see what's going on, not only with the whole mesh within the system, but here's what's going on for this product page in this namespace. And we can actually take a look at breaking that down further. and we can look at the workload dashboard, for example. This isn't in my drop down, but if I do this, just go here, go manage Istio and workload dashboard. Now I can see what the workload is in terms of Istio Ingress Gateway. It'll take a second to populate. Could be my script ran out over here. Oh, it's still running. We set this for the last 5 minutes, about every 10-second refresh or whatever. And there is a lot more information on the Grafana documentation. I'll close some of the stuff. Okay, my data came in here on the Istio workload dashboard. Namespace book info. And we can do various things on request routing within the service mesh. And the text does a really good job of describing this. Timeouts, bounded retries, limits, in order to get the most effectiveness in terms of improving the robustness of your applications. The really cool thing about using the service mesh is that this intelligence, the security concerns in terms of policies, the routing and retries, all this happens at the mesh layer, doesn't have to be coded into the application. So things that you'd have to re-implement in each application all across your enterprise could be handled by the service mesh here. Here there's a little depiction of how we can use an A/B sort of a routing in order to make sure that we properly tested a new application in terms of maybe letting a percentage of the users use it, or specify canaries or A/B deployments, actually even by name, like by a header. So we can try that. So I could create a virtual service object here that will direct all the traffic to reviews v1. But before we do this, I want to go back to something. I want to play with this a little bit. If we look at Kiali and this service mesh and ask ourselves, what would happen if version 2 went away? What would our product page look like? Or what would happen to the service mesh if we just killed the reviews pod? Well, it's hard to kill a reviews pod and see the results because it fixes itself just so fast. So now, I mean, here's a review service across these, right? But if we wanted to go ahead and not have reviews, if something happened to this reviews pod, particularly like, for example, version 2 with the black stars, we could simulate that by scaling that pod to 0. And if I go to my topology map here, I see reviews 2 here. I could just go ahead and click on the details. I see one pod is running. Scale that to 0. And let's see if we get resilience out of this system. Now it takes a while. It takes a minute because we're looking at the last minute and it's not quite real time. but we'll see what happens if we look at reviews. Click on that. Then I'm going to go up to my sample app. And the reason I want to show you this to you now is we're about to change the way this operates. Okay, so I'm reloading here. And I'm only getting no ratings or red ratings. None. It's operating just a little slow for me. Or red. None. Red. Red. None. Red. We're going to get none or red. That's the trick here. So that's the way the application works. But notice we don't have any kind of uh, error results to the user because it's really not that important. They see the ratings to get, that's dispensable and shouldn't block the application deployment. So now we'll see that this is showing here in the graph. Note we don't have any red here, but we don't have any traffic going here either. We're going to get no ratings or red ratings. Now if I go back to, I'm going to heal this by going back here to my topology map, scaling it back to 1. Okay, and now we're going to do a little application to send everything to service 1. Virtual service all v1. It's actually doing a OC or kubectl creation by applying this service. And if we take a look and we want to see virtual service all, just what that is, or expand that, make sure I get the right, yeah, all v1 shows here in the route that everything's going to go to destination v1. That's our only destination listed here. So let's apply that. I'm going to have to open up another terminal. Okay. And you know what? I'm going to stop the. Well, we'll take a moment here to see. Yeah, all 3 ratings versions are working now. They'll change shortly. They'll go to V1. And if I were to take, I'm looking at details V1 here. If I looked at the overall product page, I want to look at V3. V3 is getting 0 ops. Let me make sure this is still running. Yep. And V2 is getting 0 ops. V1 is getting full ops. So take a look over here. can see my not sure why that's depending. Let's try it. Yeah, each click here is without ratings, so we're in V1, and that's how that works. Now you can see this default set of virtual services with this. Or get the virtual services and see what's going on with those. If you're going to be working in an OpenShift Kubernetes, I sure hope you enjoy YAML. And here we'll get, this would get us the actual status of how things are working right now by doing a get of the reviews endpoint and describing that in YAML. And it shows that there's one endpoint, review subset version 1. Okay, now I'm seeing this represented too here. All the traffic here from reviews is just going to the one here. Yeah. Now we can do a little A/B testing. We can apply a new policy here, or a configuration, I should say, that says V2 and V3. And if we look at that, V2 matches it. This dash here means there's a definition. Here's another definition. Here's a list. And this list has a match. This list has just a route, but this one has a route and a match. And the match says headers have to be matching exactly. And you could have a regex or a starts with, but exact has to be JSON. JSON. So, sorry about that. So let's apply this. Okay, that's a harmless warning. Don't have to worry about that. And this would show us that the rule is actually completed. I have great confidence it is. If we see YAML come out of this, I always like to pipe it through less because that clears the screen, gives us a clear scrollable view of what's going on. Yep, they have to be exactly JSON. So what does that mean when we hit the application? I think it means that I'm only going to get red stars when I'm not logged in. But if I were signed in as Jason, I got black stars. Log out, I got red stars. So here's how you can build a group of beta testers to actually run it in deployment with the different or new features, and make sure everything works. And that's the end of that chapter 4 and the third video. We'll come back to finish the advanced service mesh deployment.